Honourable members, tackling Russia's hybrid war is not only about traditional defence. It is about software for drones.
Europe no longer sleeps. Drones buzz across borders, jets breach skies, and Moscow tests patience with a smirk. NATO debates fire or caution, unity or hesitation. The grey zone between peace and war grows darker every day. Will the alliance act before Europe feels war on its own skin? NATO allies are grappling with a new reality. Russia's growing provocations are testing the alliance's limits and patience. In recent weeks, the mood in Brussels has shifted from alarm to action. The 32-member alliance is now discussing a more forceful response to Vladimir Putin's increasingly brazen moves, including the potential deployment of armed drones along the Russian border and easing the restrictions on pilots to open fire on Russian aircraft. According to 4 NATO officials briefed on the talks, the discussions are designed to raise the costs for Moscow's so-called hybrid warfare and to set out clearer countermeasures following a string of airspace violations by Russian drones and jets. Frontline states bordering Russia, backed by France and the United Kingdom, initiated the conversations, which have since expanded to include a broader group of member nations. Proposals on the table range from arming reconnaissance drones, currently used only for surveillance, to conducting live NATO military exercises along remote stretches of the Russian frontier. Russian drones have been spotted over Polish and Romanian territory, while MiG fighter jets crossed into Estonian airspace. Elsewhere, dozens of unidentified drones disrupted air traffic at airports in Belgium, Denmark and Germany. Incidents some officials have linked to Moscow's grey zone tactics, which also include cyberattacks and sabotage.
We must be ready to leave our comfort zone. We need to explore new ways of doing things. And most importantly, we must deter everyone who seeks to harm our territory and our people. The choice before us is very simple. We either can shy away and watch Russian threats escalate, or we meet them with unity, deterrence and resolve.
As the European Union moves to curb the activities of suspected Russian intelligence operatives disguised as diplomats and invests in anti-drone defence systems, NATO's own internal debate is accelerating. 2 NATO officials told reporters that one pressing concern is harmonising rules of engagement along the alliance's eastern flank. While some member states allow their fighter pilots to fire based on radar detection, others still demand visual confirmation, a discrepancy that could prove dangerous in fast-moving encounters. The phrase grey zone has swiftly entered Europe's political vocabulary, a term used to describe an uneasy limbo between peace and war.
We are not at war, but we are no longer at peace either.
Merz's remark may lack the poetic gravity of Sir Edward Grey's "The lamps are going out all over Europe," but it captures the sense of a continent slipping into a new age of uncertainty. For 80 years, Europe's peace was considered sacrosanct. Now, that assumption is fading. Drone incursions, sabotage attempts, cyber attacks, all are symptoms of a strategic shift. Former NATO Secretary-General George Robertson, who co-authored a British government defence review, warned that Europe's complacency had left it exposed. The recent wave of drone sightings that forced temporary airport closures across mainland Europe exposed just how unprepared the continent remains. Denmark's Copenhagen airport was shut twice in a week. Oslo and Munich airports faced similar disruptions. Russian officials have dismissed Europe's concerns as paranoia, with Putin mockingly denying that his drones could even reach Western Europe. Meanwhile, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev took a darker tone, saying,
I hope the provocations would make short-sighted Europeans feel the danger of war on their own skin.
If Moscow's strategy is to sow confusion and hesitation, it appears to be working. NATO nations are split over how to respond, some urging caution to avoid a direct clash with a nuclear power, others calling for a robust show of strength. Trump's unpredictable approach adds another layer of uncertainty. After Russian drones breached Polish airspace, he reacted on social media with a casual, "Here we go," before, later suggesting it might have been a mistake. At the United Nations, however, he floated the idea that NATO members should shoot down Russian planes depending on the circumstances. This ambiguity has left European leaders wondering just how far Washington's support would extend in a crisis. Christine Bazina of the German Marshall Fund believes Russia is deliberately exploiting that uncertainty.
Right now, Russia is testing just how protected Europe is. Is the European shift to harder power and defense real? Are the Europeans developing actual capabilities to stop Russia? And what is the US appetite for having Europe's back?
The West has begun to respond. Britain and France have dispatched additional jets to NATO's eastern flank. Poland invoked Article 4 of the Alliance Charter, prompting emergency consultations. Several nations have floated the idea of a drone wall to shield against Russian incursions. Ukraine, ironically, has sent military trainers to help NATO states understand Russian tactics. At this year's NATO summit, allies agreed to raise defence spending to 3.5% of GDP, a gesture welcomed by Trump. But as Maida Rouge from the European Council on Foreign Relations points out, Europe faces an economic challenge. Strategists warn that the greatest threat may not come from open conflict, but from the erosion of societal resilience. Nicholas Dungan, CEO of Cogito Praxis, agrees that the response must go beyond the military.
The problem is not entirely military, and the response is not entirely military. It depends on the resilience of the whole of society, including major companies that control the critical systems that allow our societies to function.
In The Hague, NATO's recent conference on civil-military cooperation underscored the need for joint readiness, from governments to the private sector. As the alliance faces a volatile Kremlin, the lesson may be that time is no longer on its side. Russia's tactics have forced NATO to confront its vulnerabilities. But in doing so, Putin may also have reminded Europe why the alliance exists in the first place.